crackling. Can everybody hear me okay? Duchess learned about her destiny on the morning after her 8th birthday, when she awoke and discovered that her feet had changed overnight. It was a terrifying sight. "Grandma," she cried, "what happened?" Her grandmother pulled back the covers, took a peek, then sat calmly at the edge of the bed. "Dear child," she said, "this is the beginning." "The beginning of what?" Duchess asked. She pulled her knees to her chest so she could get a closer look. Her feet, which had been normal when she'd gone to sleep, were now flat, black, and webbed. "Take them off," she said, pulling on them as if they were shoes. "Make them go away." "They will go away," her grandmother said. "Don't worry, you will learn how to make them come and go as you please." But they didn't go away. They stayed while she got dressed, and they stayed while she ate breakfast. She tried to squeeze them into shoes, but they wouldn't fit. "I'm not going to school like this," Duchess insisted. "A princess must be educated," her grandmother said, gently pushing her out the palace door. "A princess must never be ashamed of who she is." The village kids pointed and laughed as Duchess waddled down the lane, her big flat feet making flapping sounds. "She looks like a duck," they said. "Ugly duck, ugly duck." She felt ugly. The webbed feet disappeared later that day, and after school, Duchess ran home barefoot and didn't complain about the sharp rocks in the lane. She was so happy to have toes again. But more changes came that year. She grew taller, her legs turning as skinny and gangly as a bird's. Sometimes when she laughed, she'd honk, which made all the other kids laugh, and in the morning she'd find white feathers in her bed. And she began to crave the plants that grew in the pond behind the schoolhouse. Spring green and tender, they looked so delectable. One day she waded in and began to eat them. "Look, the princess has flipped her crown. She's eating weeds." Luckily, the village children didn't notice her also eating the little water bugs that skimmed the pond's surface. They tasted just as good as the cook's roasted beast. "What is happening to me?" Then one morning, while walking home from school, Duchess spied a downy feather floating in the wind. It looked exactly like the feathers she often found in her bed. She chased after it, then saw another and another drifting in the distance. The trail led her to a lake behind the palace, where a bevy of swans had gathered. Although they migrated to the palace grounds every winter, Duchess never paid close attention to them. She knew they were beautiful with their snowy white feathers, black beaks, and black eyes. But as she sat in the grass, watching them preen and glide, she came to an amazing realization. Their swan feet looked exactly like the webbed feet she'd grown. She was one of them. And so Duchess began to teach herself how to control the changes. It was not easy, for a sneeze could turn one arm into a wing, or a laughing fit could make a beak appear. And by the time she was 10, she could control the transformation. She could turn herself into a swan whenever she wanted. She saved this reveal for a very special day at Spell Elementary School. It was late spring and the class was lined up along the edge of the swimming pool. "Today we will learn how to do a swan dive," her teacher, Mrs. Waters Sprite, said, pointing to the highest board. The students lined up at the bottom of the ladder. There were many trembling legs and terrified squeals as they climbed. "This is the most graceful dive of all," Mrs. Waters Sprite explained. "Put your hands above your head, lean forward, and jump. Then spread your arms wide like wings." One by one, the students jumped. Some clawed at the air as if trying to stop the fall. Some landed on their bellies. Others went feet first. "No, no, no," Mrs. Waters Sprite hollered. "That was not graceful." Duchess went last. She raised her arms above her head and gripped the end of the board with her toes. It was a long way down. The other students looked small. Some were shivering beneath their towels. With their faces turned upward, they waited for the ugly duck girl to jump. "Dive!" Mrs. Waters Sprout ordered. Duchess bounced 3 times, then jumped. And just as gravity grabbed hold of her, she reached out her arms, closed her eyes, and transformed. The dive was perfection, and when she rose to the surface, the village kids cheered. And that day, the ugly duck girl became the Swan Princess. So that's my introduction to you of Duchess. So I want to do the raffle. I want to make sure that the newcomers all get raffle tickets.